Steven C. Productions.
You can get wherever you want as long as you put in the hard work. You can learn to be a general contractor as long as you put in the work, right? You can be a doctor as long as you put in the work. Anyone can do anything as long as you put in the hard work.
You're listening to Talking from Experience, not the only podcast that takes long breaks and then drops an episode out of the blue like nothing happened. If you're an experienced listener, welcome back. And if you didn't know, you gotta learn. My name is Steven and I am your host. I know it's been a while, but don't worry. Aside from this one, I've got another episode coming for you before the end of the year. But before we get to that, today I'll be talking with Set Linares. He is the owner of the Linares Family Roofing Company and a friend of mine of over 10 years. Man, I feel old. We'll be talking about how he got started and is now thriving in the roofing business, and how he was inspired to take his family from microwave pizzas every day to gourmet tacos. Check it out. Ever since I known you, you're like one of those people, dude. I feel like everything you try, you're like really good at immediately. I just want to know, like, where do you get these powers from, dude?
I guess it could be seen as a good or a bad thing, because I've actually had this conversation a few times with my fiance and my brother, even, and my sister, my siblings, because they've asked me similar things too. And I always try not to let it get to my head, because as a kid growing up, being good at a lot of the things you do, it makes you mean. Yeah. It makes you mean. But I think what I've done to embrace the things that I'm good at is I've tried to humble myself by focusing on also some of the things I'm bad at. Like communication, at least honest communication, sometimes has been very difficult for me. Sometimes I feel like lies just would come out, like I would like to lie and lie and lie. So it may just seem that I'm good at a lot of these things, but I'm just really good at portraying it. I'm just really good at making it seem like I'm good at something.
I don't know, dude. That can be hard to argue when you're over there 360 quick scope across the map talking about, I'm not actually good at modern warfare. I'm just lying to you.
No, I mean, don't get me wrong. I know I'm good at some things, but in order to remain good at things and God not smiting me, I have to understand that He's allowed me to be good at certain things, not everything. Right? Because I need to be constantly aware that I have flaws too. Because you tooting my horn and telling me like, hey, you're good at everything. It feels good. It sounds good, but I'm not, I'm not good at everything. So the few things that I am good at that I've come to embrace, I feel it's just that very reason that I'm good at it is because I'm thankful for them. Because I constantly thank God for it. I'm like, hey, God, you know what? You gave me a really granular type of thinking mind. You want me to think from A to Z instead of thinking from A to D, before I even make a decision, and then I feel like my brain works really fast. Like the neurons move really quickly. Because I'm like I make decisions quickly and stuff like that. But I'm like, God, why'd you make me like this? And then He opens my eyes to, hey, that's actually, it could be bad too. It's like, because sometimes I make decisions too quickly. You know what I mean? I make decisions too quickly and then it gets me in trouble. And I'm like, well, then I thought I was good at everything. Actually, no, I made a mistake because I would think like that. Everyone is good at their own certain things. Me specifically, I just really like outdoorsy things, so you'll never see me trying to do something that I'm not good at. That's what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone's good at something, so you've probably seen me where I shine, like, hey, I shine at this, I shine at that, and I shine at these other things. But the things I'm not good at, I'm gonna hide. I'm gonna keep to myself, because nobody preaches or announces their weaknesses, so it's just a good constant reminder, for myself at least. Set, you're good at some things, but bro, you're human. You're human, so don't let it get in your head, because God will smite me. That's like always running through my brain.
And that's true. I love that you brought that up. It's like nobody's gonna highlight their shortcomings. Like people aren't gonna highlight how bad they are at something, And that's crazy because I feel like everybody's the same way. Like I find myself doing the exact same thing too.
It was a huge revelation
Yeah,
revelation for me too, you know, because like in high school everybody was faking. That's what I'm saying. Everybody was faking. But I didn't know that about you. I didn't know that about you, that you were up fronting, essentially. Is that what you said? Like,
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, fronting is just like
another term.
Yeah. I like it.
Somebody else. But I mean, I feel like I don't feel like you ever fronted in front of me. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I've always accepted you for who you were. You know, I knew you were more of a keep it to yourself kind of dude. And then when you had your moments, you were out there with us, spending time with us. And then it was like, okay, if he's here, cool. If he's not, that's cool too. Because, you know, you wanted to kind of do your own thing.
Yeah. And it's crazy because I feel like, especially people who are extroverted, they see that as like an insult.
Oh, or dude, like, don't get me started.
Especially when because like that, literally, like that's the difference in people's attitude. The difference in how people are. Like extroverted people, the way they unwind is like, hey, let's get surrounded by friends. Let's go do all these XYZ activities.
Yeah,
and that's how they unwind. Like introverted people is like, yo, let me sit at the house with a movie.
Exactly.
Like, let me clear my mind. Like, that's how I clear my mind. It's just like, let me put on some good tunes and just chill. And then like other people that like, let me clear my mind. Let me hit up all the friends and like, let's go here, there, and do all these things. And
yeah,
it's crazy because I had to explain that to people. I remember one time talking to somebody like, oh man, I finally had a day to just chill. And they were like, oh, you went out? I'm like, dude, I stayed in. Like my whole week I've been going out. What you mean?
That's funny. And you hit that right on the money, because me, I'm definitely introverted, but I'm definitely more, I want to say like maybe 70% extroverted if you were to put a percent on it. So I myself have gotten frustrated. I won't say any names, but with some of our friends, you know, in our circle that sometimes keep more to themselves. I've had a friend that frustrated me like that. I was like, oh my God, hang out with me, man. Hang out with me. And then he was always the dude that was like, no, I'll hang back. I was like, you want to go eat? No, I'll chill. You want to come to my daughter's birthday party? No, I'll chill. He's like, okay, you want to come to this baseball game? No, I'll chill. And, you know, I got to that point where I felt like I'm always inviting this friend, and then they're never available. But then the thing is I got frustrated about that. And then I feel like he would probably feel that I'm frustrated. But then when I see him next time, he's cool as a cucumber. He's just like, hey, man, how you doing?
Yeah, it's
like
all
if
love.
Nothing happened, right? And he's fine. It's just me in my brain that's frustrated because he doesn't want to hang out with me. But he's like, that's just who he is.
Yeah.
So it's fine to be on both sides of the introverted sides.
A part of growth too is like I've had to do the same thing, because that used to be me. I don't know if you're talking about me.
No,
but
I'm not talking. Like, you're actually a little more extroverted.
No, yeah, and that's something that I've gotten better at. So honestly, like I used to be that way too. It's like, hey, you want to do this, and I'd be like, no. And then I went through it real bad, especially when I was started to lose my sight more, because it's like it was more nervousness of being out in public. But I've gotten better at it, right? And it's like, hey, you want to go do this and that? It's like, even though sometimes I really don't want to, I have to, because I understand that people who want to be out and stuff that's your way of showing me that you care about me.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, let's hang out. Like, let's go. I don't know. Let's go to the movie. Let's go to Top Golf. You know?
Exactly.
Shout out Top Golf. Give me a sponsorship. But it's like it's like I've had to be like, hey, I have to do this in order to nurture this friendship, nurture this relationship, because that's important too. Like that's something that I've realized. It's like we need connections, man. We need people who know things.
Yeah.
I'm speaking to introverts here. That we have to learn to get out of our comfort zone and really nurture these types of friendships, especially.
Yeah.
Because I mean, somebody told me once, if you want to see things you've never seen before, you got to go places you've never been before. You got to do things you never did before, because otherwise your life's going to be the same.
Wise.
And it's like through connections, through friendships, that opportunities arise. I think it's an Arnold Schwarzenegger quote where he's like, you'll never climb the ladder of success with your hands in your pocket.
I've never heard that one.
You ever try to climb a ladder with no hands, bro?
I've seen in my industry.
Yeah, you know
I've seen it. People get hurt.
It's crazy. So, tell me about the business. Like, how'd you get into roofing in particular? Because I remember you wanted to go to law school.
Yeah. No, I did, and I still do, kind of. Well, I don't know if I want to go to law school, but I was very interested in law. I think my brain has just always enjoyed like breaking things down. Breaking things down to a science, almost that of an engineer. I've even actually fiddled a little bit in the engineer category because I kind of have to in this industry.
Yeah, construction type.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to know, where to put a screw exactly, or where to put a plate exactly, where to put a brace, because there's weight alternating at the top rail of the balcony versus the bottom rail. More strength at the bottom than the top, and that sort of thing, and this kind of does hit that, being in the construction category. I do a lot more roofing than anything else, but I do a lot of general contractor work, like remodeling homes, essentially. Outside of them, siding, interior, but roofs are my main enchilada, if you will. But I got into it because just like I guess anyone, they kind of grow up into whatever their parents were doing, right? And my parents being immigrants into the country, and then fixing their stuff. My dad couldn't put food on the table any other way. So I remember being poor, and growing up poor, and eating pizzas all the time. And the microwavable pizzas, and eating ramen noodles all the time. You know what I mean? And my dad, that's all he could afford. But he was providing by working in roofing. He was like, I need to do whatever he could do. Like, let's be honest. Whenever you work in the construction field, you see a lot of people out there. It's always Latinos. It's always Latinos, man. It's always the brown people who are out there working. Yep. We're always out there working. Why? Because you can work under an umbrella of another entity, like a company that pays for your workers' compensation, right? At least for a while, and that sort of thing.
As a contractor.
Yeah, as a subcontractor.
Right.
As a subcontractor. Don't get me wrong, you still got to have your stuff in order, right? But you don't necessarily need to own an entire company to be able to be a labor hand. You work as labor, as long as your papers are good, you can get paid. And you get paid really good money. These guys make like $150, $200 a day. But man, do they get their butts kicked. But that was me at some point. And before it was me, then it was my dad. That's how I got into it. Because my dad would do that. And then my dad started getting contracts. Because he started as a laborer. And then he learned the industry while I was a kid. And then he started getting contracts on his own. After he worked as part of a crew. First, right after he worked as part of the crew. And then as I grew up and I was high school age, he started taking me, and he would pay me the wages that he would pay these other guys. I was in school, of course, so I would only like work weekends, but it was very rewarding, the industry, to be able to take something that looks ugly and that needed updating. Taking something that's breaking, something that's rotted, something that needs strengthening, if you will. It's almost a physical way to be able to reinforce something, concrete foundation first, and then go from there. So then I started doing that with my dad in high school, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because you start learning this and using your own two hands. It's actual physical labor, and it pays the bills really well. So I was a kid. I was 18 years old, I was 16 years old, and I already bought a car at 16. So first off, it pays really well, and I was 16, and I was able to buy a car. Right. So I was like, man, how much more money can I make in this industry?
Right. Yeah.
As a 16-year-old buying my first car, because I was just working with my dad. But I got an interview to go work at this commercial company because they were going to pay me on a salary basis. And then that's how you that's how I got into like TPO working. I went to the interview and they're like, okay, I'm gonna give you a job and then we'll see how you do.
Yeah.
And then I YouTubed it. I was like, man, I will figure this out no matter what. I YouTubed it. And then after I studied it a little bit, then I went to the interview and I did the repair that they wanted me to do. And then they gave me the welding machine, and then I started welding. It was not one of the weldings like the metal stuff. It was TPO welding, so it's a lot more simple. But I did it, and that's how I got the job. They were like, "Oh, okay, you can do this type of work." It's like, yes, I can. Thank you, YouTube.
and that's what's crazy to me is like literally anybody can do these types of trades, and it's crazy because I feel like it's kind of low. Like a lot, like there's more work than there is workers nowadays.
Yeah,
and I don't know if it's just because it's like, I guess the way I see it is like it's not fancy. You know, I feel like people see like people who do like manual labor is like, oh, like they're below me. Like I hire these type of people, but it's like, dude, no, like honestly, like we need more people out here doing these types of trades. I remember right out of high school, right, I didn't know what I wanted to do either, and for a while, like I was just doing like anything that came my way.
Yeah.
And I remember one of my friends his dad had a body shop, and I go hang out with him, and he was like, "Hey, do you have a job yet?" I'm like, "Nah." He's like, "You want to work like at the body shop, like fixing cars?" And I was like, "I don't know nothing about cars." He's like, "Don't worry, like I'll teach you." And it's crazy because I literally went over there. I was like, "What do you do?" He's like, "I didn't even start working working on the cars yet." He's like, "I need you to paint this fence."
What the heck?
And I was like, all right, cool. I was like, how much I'm gonna get paid, you know? And
How
like,
much?
he's like, I'll pay you $60 to paint the fence. Like, all right, here I am with my bucket of yellow paint and like painting the fence. And I was like, all right, what else? Like, all right, here's this and that. And little by little, he's like, okay, like today you're gonna like clean the area where we work. Like literally, like some days I would just sweep, clean, and then when they started getting me on the cars was like, it was after they fixed it. Because that's another satisfying job to do.
Yeah.
It's like you take you a busted up car that's been in an accident,
and
you either fix the part or you find the replacement, and then you do the paint job, and it's like that car comes looking like a crumbled up beer can.
Yeah.
And you see like a nice looking car driving off the lot. Like that's not the
you
same
feel
car.
proud, right?
Yeah, and it's crazy because they started me on like that. It's like, hey, we fixed this car. Customer's gonna come get it. Just wash it. And it's like, all right, cool. Now I just wash the cars after they fix them, and then afterwards it's like, hey, we're getting this car. We're gonna paint it. Like we need you to prep it. Here's sandpaper. Is how you do it. Like here you go. And then later it's like I learned how to do the primer, and I like people like that, right? There's people that don't care what skills you have. Say, hey, we're gonna work you from the ground up. It's like we need people here, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember the one time, like I was working there, like I still hadn't even been working on the cars that much. My friend he kind of was the owner, and he was like, hey, I need you to remove the door off of that truck. And I was like, oh man, like I don't know how to do that. He's like, here's the tools you need, you'll figure it out.
Oh my gosh.
And I was just there like, okay, how am I gonna do this? And then obviously, like if he saw me struggling too much, he'll come and help me. And he's like, here, look, you don't want it to fall on you. Here's a jack, put it under the door so you can take off the screws. I'm like, oh, okay. And now I got a jack holding up the door, and it's like, all right, I take off the screws, and like, okay, there's wires. Okay, just follow the wires, unplug it. And I took off that door, and I was like proud, you know. Like, man, I took the door off of that truck.
From little by little.
Yeah, and it's like here, and it was like that. It's like, hey, take off this door, like remove this bumper. And then now it's like I like that I know some of that stuff, because it's like I don't drive, right? But I got my wife a car. It sometimes needs maintenance. And it's like we had a busted taillight. And it's just like, oh man, like we got to take it to a body shop. I'm like, nah, no, we don't. Like I know, I kind of know how to do this. Like I went to Walmart and bought the sockets that I needed, ordered the part on like carparts.com or whatever the heck it is.
AutoZone.com or
yeah.
Probably.
And it's just like, man, quítaselo, take out the old part, put on the new one, and boom, it worked. I was like, man, we didn't have to go spend like $400 at a body shop for like a job that literally took 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's really not hard, man. All these like different trades in general contractors, car work, like you're saying, even sometimes being a mechanic, or it's just anything that is considered a trade. You can do it, right? Of course, there are some that are a little more difficult, like being a doctor or whatever, but it's all simple as long as you put in the hard work. You can get wherever you want as long as you put in the hard work. You can learn to be a general contractor as long as you put in the work, right? You can be a doctor as long as you put in the work. Anyone can do anything as long as you put in the hard work. You wanted to learn how to remove that door. You were like, I'm going to do this. And one way or another, you would get it done. The first time will be kind of rough, probably.
Yeah.
Because when I went to do that TPO work, it wasn't perfect, but enough to land me the job, right? And then after that, you do it again, and you get better, and you do it again, and you get better, you do it again, and you get even more better until you master it, right? And that's how anyone really starts. That's why it kind of sucks that sometimes some people are like, how much experience do you have, right? Or do you have a license, or this is the... And you're like, well, I'm just starting out, give me a chance. And some people won't give you that chance. So it's like, well, what do you resort to? I got to go learn it myself now. Nobody's showing me, nobody's training me. So I want to encourage those people too. Like, you can figure it out. You can figure it out. If you want to do it, you can figure it out. The only thing that's in the way of people is themselves. The people are just so lazy, man. Like, I grew up poor. Like, I straight up grew up like extremely poor, for immigrant parents and stuff like that. And I'm not saying I'm rich. I'm not, but I'm comfortable. If you want to be comfortable, you can do it.
Yeah.
And you can figure it out.
It's a whole mindset too. Like, sadly, I grew up, like, my family had, I don't know if it's like messed up views on money, or like, just, I feel like also it's just not the education. Because like, I remember people used to say like, oh, doing this XYZ, like, that's not for us, like, that's for people with money. And like, literally I would be like, well, why don't we have money? Honestly, now that I've grown up, it's sad that I'm like, it's hard for me to make up an excuse for why don't I have money.
Yeah.
Because even like a little income, if you're good at managing it, it can go a long way, a really long way. And I'm learning that.
Yeah.
It's like, man, same thing. It's like, I feel like people ask for too much, right? People can't be happy sometimes with like, dude, you have a house and a car. There's people that literally have nothing, and they're like, oh, I'm so poor.
I need to have 10 cars.
Yeah. And it's just like, dude, no, like, you're good. What else do you need? And then I feel like a part of it is our society that is to blame, right? Because you want to, what they say, keep up with the Joneses. And it's like, now I want a house like that, It's like, especially people who grow up poor, we can get caught in that of like, oh, like, I got some money now. And a lot of times you come to the realization that's like, oh, some of my goals were not unrealistic. Yeah, at least that's the way I've come across with dealing with money as an adult myself. It's like, hey, some of my goals were not unrealistic. It's just that nobody told my parents that.
Yeah.
And it's just like, a lot of people are more about the immediate gratification.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to spend my $10 on this right now so I can have this that's going to bring me joy for today.
Like right now. Yeah.
And versus like, hey, let me put this $10 aside, and then tomorrow I'll get another $10, and then tomorrow I'll get another $10. In 10 days, you'll have $100. It's like, exactly. That'll take you way further than 10.
Yeah.
Delayed gratification is something that I feel like is not promoted in today's society. Like, we want what's going to make me feel good now.
Yeah.
Instead of, hey, let me grow with this. Let me learn. Let me build something.
Growing up the way that we did, like me, at least personally, it's kind of like you, even when you go to like school, right? You go to school, they don't teach you about investing. They don't teach you about the stock market. They don't teach you about starting a business, right? The only way you learn all these things is if you go and you pay for it in college, not when you're a youngling and coming up and learning or figuring out what kind of future you want, figuring out, what you want your life to be. They don't. They teach you some things that are important, but then honestly, some things that we don't even need. Right. So, and then I grew up, I'm an adult, and I'm like, what's investing? And then another adult hears me and they're like, you don't know what investing is? You're an adult. And I'm like, no, what is that? Like, have you saved money before? Saved money? That's possible.
Put money, not use my money today. I don't have to spend all my money.
I have $100. You're telling me I don't have to spend all 100 in one day? What's wrong with you? But that's how it is. That's how we grew up, right? At least when you grow up poor, you're not really shown that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But as adults, and we kind of think back on that, I think back on that, and I'm like, man, I grew up poor, and I don't want my child or my daughter to be that way. What can I do? And then what being poor did for me is now I'm like, I've grown up, and I appreciate that I was poor. You know, I appreciate that I did come from all the way down there, because I'm never going to forget my roots. Mm-hmm. I go back to my roots every weekend, right? To the same neighborhood for church and in that same area. And I'm never going to forget where I'm from. But it was those very roots that empower me and make me feel like, man, I can do anything. Right. And now I want to invest. So let me figure this thing out. YouTube again.
And it's crazy because you talked about like you having to pay for it in college to learn these things. You either pay for it in college or you pay for it after you've made the mistake and realize that, oh snap, I don't know how to pay taxes. I owe the IRS $10,000. And it's just like, oh snap, you're gonna pay for it either way.
Exactly.
Like that's something that I've had the conversation. I feel like even on the podcast a couple times, we should have these things put into us as kids. And our parents
taught this.
Our parents weren't taught this, so they're not going to. They send us to school hoping that the school is going to provide us with the tools we need to know these things. Like oh, why you send your kid to school? To get an education. And it's like, okay, but it's like, then you're an adult. Okay, how do I pay my taxes? Mitochondrion is the powerhouse of the cell. Like, you know,
the cell wall and all that stuff.
Yeah, like, okay, that's great if you want to learn about botany and have a garden and you want to open up a flower shop. That's great, but I mean, you know, there's things like taxes. Like everyone has to do taxes.
It's crazy, right?
Like,
why don't they teach about taxes? You know, the first time I thought about taxes was when I went to the store as a kid. I had my first dollar to myself. I went to the store and I bought a bag of chips. And I was like, here's $1. I think the chips costed like 69 cents at that time. You know, now they cost like $1.99. Yeah. But I bought the bag of chips and they were like, oh yeah, it's going to be, I don't know, but they charged me taxes. And then I was like, what's taxes? As a kid in school, you know, and then they were like, they didn't even explain it to me. They were like, you got to pay for the chips and taxes. I'm like, okay, dang. So I just left and I went back and I remember asking my mom, I was like, Mom, what's taxes? They just charged me taxes out of my $1 and I got my chips, but it cost me more than what the price said. And my mom was like, well, you pay taxes and you get it back at end of year. And I'm like, wait,
you're like, I don't.
I get it back at end of year. So I'm going to get those 8 cents back, or what do you mean? You know? And I was just so confused. That was the first time, my first encounter with taxes. And I was just like, taxes suck. They're taking my money and I'm a kid. Like I barely made that $1. You know, what do I do now?
Yeah.
But yeah, man, they definitely need to prepare you more for the world.
What's crazy is they should educate more on taxes, because especially if we went to public school, that's what taxes pay for, is our education. And the fact that we're not educated on taxes by tax dollars it's ridiculous. You know,
I never thought about it that way. Tax dollars do pay for public schools.
And it's like, oh, cool. Like we got all this money for to go to the school. It's like, great. It's like, maybe we should teach the kids about taxes, so that way they pay them so we can get a better education. No, don't teach them about taxes.
No, don't.
It'll be too expensive.
Forcibly take it instead.
and it's crazy because it's like the logic is it'll be too expensive to add these courses to curriculums and stuff. But like the more people are educated, the more people will either do their taxes better, and they'll end up getting more people contributing to their taxes, because there's a lot of 1099 workers that don't report taxes. Yeah. And sometimes it's not because they don't want to, it's because they're not educated on doing so.
Yeah. You hit a very true point there, because in this industry, a lot of the subcontractors, they're known as subcontractors because they're 1099s. They're an individual entity. So they have to go at the end of the year and go report how much money they made and pay their taxes. But again, to that topic, being mostly Latinos and that come in here without an education, just trying to put food on the table like my dad did as I was growing up, they have absolutely no idea about this thing. And sure, some people can argue, well, it's their job to learn that. Yes, it is their job to learn that, but they don't even teach it in our public schools to the citizens. What makes you think that these they term them that way, right? These illegal immigrants, because they term them that way, are going to go and teach them themselves? No, instead of you seeing them as an illegal immigrant, these guys came in here to work hard. Yeah. And they're figuring this out as they go. And some of them actually do pay taxes, but some of them don't, because they're simply not taught. They don't have that knowledge. And us as citizens don't even get that knowledge.
Citizens don't even know.
It's just like, go to the tax office. What do I have to pay? That's it. We don't really know about taxes, even though we're citizens or residents or anything like that. Because it's a very complicated area. Yeah,
it's unfortunate, because that's a lot of the argument for like the war on immigration. It's like, oh, immigrants come and they become 1099 workers and they don't pay their taxes. But also it's like a lot of citizens don't pay their taxes, and it's not because they don't want to. It's because they don't know. Like, we don't know. Yeah. And there's people that are afraid to start businesses because they're afraid to deal with taxes. Yeah, man. Like I've seen that a lot. Scary. Like, oh, like, man, why don't you start your own business? Like, why don't you start your own thing? It's like, oh man, taxes. Because if you get it wrong, you go to jail.
Tax evasion. You didn't pay 10 cents.
They'll garnish your wages. They'll take your house, bro. Like, yeah. Oh my gosh, and it's crazy, and that it's all a lack of education.
Yeah, exactly, and it is scary, because whenever I kind of took over this after my dad. Because he founded the company, right? It's when I was a kid, I kind of just took over after that. My dad himself, he tried doing what he could, but I have hands-on experience with that very topic. Is he just wasn't doing everything to perfection. He would just go to an office. Hopefully they did it right, and hopefully they did it to the point where they weren't actually scamming him. Right? He had to overpay or underpay or anything. Never knew. Right. And then so I took over, and then now I have to deal with tracking every receipt. How many miles did I drive? How many people did I pay? How much did I spend on material? Oh, okay. You've been in business this long. So tell me, how did it go on November 1st, November 2nd, November 3rd, November 4th, November 5th? Every receipt, everything tracked, every photo, every invoice. It's very intimidating. Very intimidating. But, either way, it sounds intimidating, but it can be done. Yeah, it can be done,
especially if you learned it from the ground up, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You ease into it, right? It's I've heard people say like, "Oh, I don't know how to do this," like when they encounter a new problem. But then I've heard other people say like, "Dude, caviar problems." It's like, I made so much money as a contractor, like I don't know how much taxes I have to pay. Yep. It's like, oh yeah, but you're like, the more taxes you pay, realize that that's only about 10% of what you made all year. And it's like, oh man, I have to pay $10,000 in taxes, dude. That means you pocketed $90,000. So I mean, the trade-off, you know what I mean? Yeah, and exactly. And I think that's another thing that coming from poverty teaches you is that gratefulness
to every dollar. Yeah. Getting that gratefulness for every single dollar that you earn, every single one. But it's almost like you kind of build something because the necessity of it. You know, like you said, growing up in poverty, you want to eat, you know? So that's what I'm saying. If you want to do it, you can get it done. Don't let poverty stop you. You get up, get it done, do whatever it is you want to do. You want to buy that car, get it done, right? Figure out a way, get that income, figure it out, you know? And then the rewards will come on the back end. Don't be scared of the taxes. Don't be scared of the new challenge. Don't be scared of, man, what if this is not the right career for me? Every step that you take will be at least a lesson to what step you need to take next after that. That didn't work for me. Now I know it's not for me. Let me move on to the next thing. Instead of you living your life with, man, what if I could have been good at that? Or what if that would have went well? You know, or what if that's kind of speaking a little bit, you know, of how I got into this business also, like really just, man, I got to take that step. And then the necessity of having to provide for my family. Like I need to provide for my family, and it's something that I'm good at, that I know, and it pays well, and I help people. But yeah, a lot of that necessity ties into it. But people get overwhelmed with their own thoughts, like, nah, I can't do this. It's too hard. If other people have done it, why can't they?
How did you go from starting as somebody who barely knew what they were doing to like your dad being, hey, you take the reins on this when it came to the company?
I mastered it, I want to say. Like anyone that constantly does something, you get to the point where you master it and you turn into a professional, right? You can do it left, forwards, right, and backwards. You know, I went to 2 commercial companies, and after working for my dad, after I left his company, because my dad has limitations of his language barrier, right? So there was only so much I can do, especially as coming to being an adult working under my dad. I had to get a job where it would be stable, right? So first off, forcing myself to be stable and having money to feed my family, my daughter, that's where I grew up. So I started doing that. Then I went to 2 commercial companies. I learned in these 2 commercial companies not only how to just do the work. After that, they gave me the opportunity to then learn also the sales side of it, learn the engineering side of it, city codes, how to get insurance to pay for all this work instead of it coming out of homeowners' pockets. And it all made sense, and it all tied together, right? And I'm like, man, I can do all this work. I've been mastering it. I've been doing it. And then it really hit me whenever in my last job, I helped that company get to new sales goals. I got from a company that had capped out, I believe, at 7 or 8 million in sales. When I took over the reins, we broke that my first year in, and on top of that, it was already halfway through the year when I had taken the reins over in sales, and then we broke that, and we came in right over. It was like at 9.2, right, an additional million, and then I was just like, man, it's not that I didn't want to stay in that company. But it's just that it was time. You know, I gave them 5, 6 years of my life. I helped them grow. You know, I helped them, you know, make their money. And at the same time, I learned the industry. And then I turned around and I looked at my dad. So we go back to remembering your roots, right? You know, my dad was in poverty and his company was still small and stuff like that. So then I was like, okay, why not do all this for my dad's company? Right. And I talked to my dad and I'm like, Dad, this is the family name. This is the family brand. He had done zero marketing. He had a logo, but he had a few business cards here and there, you know, and stuff like that. And then severed ties with the other company, and then did everything I learned. Right? Not that everything was done exactly. Absolutely not. Of course, I'm still my original self. But I feel a part of me is like I built that other commercial company. So then I swapped over here, did everything here, replicated here, and now we're doing amazing. My dad's making money. I'm making money. The entire Linares family is making money right from the business. At least the ones that want to join in on the team. But that's how I kind of made that transition, because I had mastered it. And now there's a whole team that we have. But it was just really that, man, it was scary jumping to doing your own thing, and like the taxes, all the idea and all that, and starting your, in a way, starting your own business.
Right.
Because, well, my dad hadn't really, had a legit business. But it was that, I can do it. Let's just get it done. Let's just go. I was scared, afraid, but let's do it. Let's go. Praying to God that God will provide, because landing a job, like you, Steven, who calls you and says, hey, Steven,
do you want money?
You want some of my money? Right? Nobody calls you. We call them leads. Nobody calls you unless you go out and you announce yourself.
Right.
Right. Who would call Steven and say, hey, Steven, I know you do podcasting. I want to be in your podcast. Not unless you now have a website, right? Now you're getting bigger. Now, you're starting to tell your friends, hey, I do this. And you tell your church community, hey, I do this. And now I know, like I learned about that you do this podcasting because you told me, right? The networking. That it was like, and then how hard it was to get people to even respond to that. You know what I mean? Like how many people want to spend $10,000 on a project, right? On a roof. So it was a whole venture. But then trusting in God, taking the leap, and then wanting to work on the family name motivated me, because now it's a company that has my family's name on it. So anyone that wants to start their own business, put your name on it, and I guarantee it'll be incredibly motivating, right?
Was it difficult for you learning sales, or did it just come naturally?
It was difficult. It was difficult because, so there's a difference working in sales and working in physical labor.
Right.
It's easier doing physical labor, even though physically it's harder. Mentally, it's easier because you don't have to deal with people. You don't deal with an annoying customer, or you don't deal with an annoying person that's not happy with what you did and that sort of thing. And you think you did it up to code or whatever. But when you're in sales, you have to promise everything. You have to make sure that everything they want is going to happen, right? And then you have to also deliver it. As a salesperson, you can't just promise things you're not going to do. So you have to put yourself in a position where you want this, then I will do this. So learning sales was a little bit harder because it was one of those things that you had to understand that you can't lie about the things that you're selling. But a lot of sales guys out there, they beat around the bush and they lie about some of their promises. So dealing with that, and then instead of, here, I'm going to put a nail over here on this shingle. All right, my day's done and I got paid. Like weigh the two, right? Then I have to go out there and learn everything you're selling. And then you have this pressure on your head that you're like, okay, should I sell like honestly and then tell them honest prices? Or should I be one of those sleazy sales guys that says, yeah, you'll get a Cadillac for the price of this trampoline? You know what I mean? And then dealing with that. But so it was a hard transition. I actually worked in physical labor for 5-6 years before I jumped into sales. And now even that I didn't want to do. I didn't want to jump into sales. It was a difficult transition, but I was able to do it.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've been wanting to get like some kind of part-time sales job just to learn the skills. Because especially like, yeah, if anybody who's doing any type of like self-employment, any type of contractor work, you have to learn how to sell, because you have to learn how to sell yourself. Exactly. You have to learn how to communicate with people. And I think honestly, my biggest thing with sales, like my biggest fear with sales actually is rejection.
Yeah, and that's actually lesson number 1 in sales. Embracing the rejection and embracing the no's. Like some of those lessons it's a lot of psychological lessons. A lot of them are psychological. Like the body language of how someone stands. Are they comfortable with you? Are they not comfortable with you? When they tell you a no, understanding that that no is one more no, getting you closer to a yes. And then training your mind to be like, thank you for that no. I'm getting closer to my yes. That's not easy to do, you know. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult. So when you're in sales, you learn a lot of those skills, but it also teaches you patience sometimes. But then you lose your patience, and you're like, oh, dude, you know what? I'm so done with this. But it pays very well. That's for sure. You know, depending on where you're at. But sales is definitely one of the harder things to do. Learning to read people and learning to rebuttal, learning to help them understand your side of the story, even though they're already stuck on theirs. It's like, oh, you don't want this? Let me explain to you why you do want it. And then they're like, excuse me? I already told you I don't want it. What are you going to tell me is going to convince me that I do want it? You know what I mean? That's difficult to do.
Yeah, definitely. I've heard about negotiation, that a negotiation isn't an argument. It's two people coming to the same conclusion. Like, you're trying to meet each other right where you guys need to be to make this work. Like, it's coming to an agreement.
Exactly.
It's not an argument like you're right, I'm wrong. It's, look, we're both right.
Exactly. And then you have to be very careful how you tread through that road, right? That's another one of the lessons is don't ever argue with the customer. It should be a conversation. That's the lesson. One of the rules we have. It's not a lesson to the customer. It's not a argument with the customer. It's not a, nah, you're wrong, you need to listen to me. It's a conversation, right? That's why you have options in your pocket. You have the conversation. Well, what do you need? You know, oh, I have a leak. Okay. What are you trying to do to fix it? Here are a few options, you know, and you want a metal solution, you want a asphalt shingle solution, you want a flat roof solution, you want me to just do the roof, or because that water came in and ruined your insulation, you want me to fix the insulation too? And then they're like, I didn't even think about that, and now it damaged my insulation. Yeah, and then it damaged your ceiling too, right? Now you have a stain. So then you're able to conversate that they actually now have to pay what? More for three things, not just the one thing that they thought. You know what I mean? But I got to that point by telling them, hey, I care about your issue. You have a leak? Okay, cool. Let's fix that. It'll cost this much. But that leak also damaged your insulation. It also damaged your sheetrock. Let me charge you 3 times as more. That sounds a little more like, whoa, get off my back. You're trying to just charge me more. It was like, oh man, I understand your situation, you know, versus this, right? I understand your situation. It looks like that water came through, damaged your insulation, damaged your sheetrock. Oh man, I want to make sure you're in good shape. I apologize you're going through this. It's going to cost this much though. You know, let's negotiate from what it costs to do all 3 things instead of negotiating for just the source and not fixing everything else that the source damaged, right? Understanding those things and how you go about it is very difficult to do.
Empathy.
A lot of empathy. You need a lot of empathy. You need to be able to put yourself in their shoes, and them in their mind were convinced, I only need to fix this leak. And then you come in telling them, actually, no, you don't. You got to fix the leak and the sheetrock and the insulation. Imagine how that makes them feel. Now I need to spend more than I thought, and you're telling me my idea was wrong. In anything, right? Not even just in sales. Let's say your spouse. Actually, spouse, you're wrong. How do you get them to turn that around? You know, first off is with empathy and understanding where they're coming from. I understand, right? You thought it was just a leak, and I'm not telling you that it's not that, but I want to make sure I fix everything, not just that, and then making them feel cared for, right? And then that is one of the best ways to get them to change their mind when they've already had their own individual idea.
How to Change People's Minds by Set Linares. Yeah, no, it's an art form, right? Because it's crazy. I feel like a lot of salespeople don't think about it that way, but sometimes the job is getting people to change their mind, and I think that's what separates a good salesman from a bad one, is because they can both upsell, they can both get that sale, but one person is gonna like you said, like they're gonna promise them the world and then some. But the other
Yeah.
person's like, this is exactly what you're gonna get, and this is why.
Yeah.
This is why you need it.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult because a lot of people, they land sales because they overpromise, and then they get slapped in the back, right? They get stabbed. It hits them in the end.
Mm-hmm.
It hits them in the end. So in my own venture, as I was learning, I would have promised things that I didn't know were in fact true or not. I was hoping they were, but I would promise them, and then after years and years and years of learning, I would be like, no, I need to make sure I properly inspect something so that I can tell them exactly what it is. And not only that, take photos and prove it to them so they know that I'm telling them the truth. This is what it is. This is the situation. This is your source. This is what we have to do to fix it. And then if I get the job, great. If I don't get the job, I'm not going to overpromise to get it, because then I'm going to get hit in the back anyway. So sometimes the newer sales guys are the ones that overpromise and beat around the bush because they don't have the experience of a customer being mad and saying, if you don't get off my property, I'm going to shoot you. Yeah. It's tough out there, man. It's tough.
And it's building the relationship too, because then if you give them the honest truth and they get exactly what they were told they were going to get, it's like, hey, that company is a reputable company. They gave me what they said they were going to give me, nothing less, and they recommend you to their friends and family. And it's about building that relationship, because if you overpromise and don't deliver, and be like, hey, no, that company, don't work with them, or don't work with that guy. Like, he'll overpromise and then under deliver.
Exactly. And then and you worked so hard to start the business, and then you start getting that type of reputation, your business is going to go nowhere, right? You need to have an online reputation, especially in this society. And then not only that, I mean, it's just very hard to live with yourself knowing that you've done someone wrong. You know what I mean? At least for me, and I would assume anyone, like, can imagine yourself sleeping at night. You took money from someone and you didn't solve their issues, but you promised you would. And it's hard to do that sometimes. And then it's all over the internet too. He promised this, didn't get this. Don't hire this company. It gets hard.
Did somebody turn you on to digital marketing, or was that something you like learned from your time with the commercial company?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the other two commercial companies I was with, they did have a social media presence. And I guess in our generation, we know how important social media is, right? So even talking to you, as I was, starting things, you would tell me how important some of these things were, So it has a huge power. It has a huge power. Being able to show the work you've done for some neighbors, and then you try and get the neighbor too, and then the neighbor looks you up, and then they see, oh, they did my neighbor to the right. Because there's only so much you can do with your words. Sometimes you need something backing you, like being on Facebook, showing that you're active, right? But I think that's what it was, mostly like realizing and understanding that people will look you up, especially if you're telling them that you're going to solve their solutions. They're going to want to see a track record of you solving solutions for someone else. So that's why I started turning into social media, where everyone is, right? Everyone's on social media, so they can see it in their own time, in their own privacy. Like, yeah, let me take a look at them and see if that's actually true, what he's saying. Yeah, so it was very important to do social media.
Yeah, I like that you brought up about putting your name on the company, right? Because especially that everybody's on social media, a lot of like faceless companies aren't doing as well as companies with a name on them. Mm-hmm. Like there's a big thing that I've been seeing is everybody's doing their personal brand alongside their company. So it's like, hey, I'm like Mark Zuckerberg has more followers than Facebook. Like Elon Musk has more followers than Tesla. and that's just because they're putting their name on it,
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's not just the metaverse, it's Zuckerberg.
Yeah,
it's not just Tesla, it's not this car company, it's Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to know like what your dad thinks about all the social media stuff. Like, does he see the importance? Like, was there some hesitance? Or
he definitely was hesitant. I had to do a lot of convincing, right? A lot of convincing in that nature.
Right, especially if you're putting money into it.
Yeah, because advertising, it costs a lot of money, because then you have to pay for Facebook ads, Google ads, and then stuff like that. But not only that, you don't just pay to be able to put ads, you design the ads. And then how do you design an ad? You got to first design a logo. How do you design a logo? You got to first design a name. So it's a lot of time being consumed on top of money being spent. So he was just like, why would we spend the profits in that? What do you mean? I'm going to pay for food on the table. You know what I mean? So that's very traditional thinking sometimes. Yeah. Putting a pizza on the table versus putting an advertisement out in the internet versus traditional and modern, you know?
You weigh the two.
Yeah, that's what it was, man. That's what it was.
Yeah, but then also it's like, hey, if we put this out into the world, right, instead of buying a pizza, we pay for the Facebook ads. Next week, we can get steaks.
Hey, there you go. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. But it's hard to do that. Like, let's say you only have enough to put either the pizza or the ad. And you're like, man, I need to eat right now.
Yeah, well, yeah, in some cases, for sure, there's a lot of cases where it's better to not do that.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you're there, it's worth it.
Yes, it's sacrifice, right? You know what? How about we have half a pizza and then have half an ad? And now we've had the two. Now we have a very, low amount of, sacrifice. That's what I'm trying to say. And then because of that ad, exactly like you said, now let's get steaks next week. And we got by with half a pizza.
You get steaks and more ads.
Now more ads and more pizza. More steak. Why do I keep saying pizza?
You love pizza, huh?
Man, that's all I would eat. Microwave pizza as a kid. That's all I would eat. Yeah. I still eat some of those to this day.
Yeah,
you
same.
grew up eating them.
Yeah, actually, not the microwave pizzas, but I don't know what it is, man. I guess because I didn't eat them often. Like, there was still variety. Like, my house was very, like, traditional Mexican. So it was like, when we didn't have nothing, bro, era like huevo con frijoles, eggs and beans, or beans and rice,
Yeah.
And to this day, man, I don't hate it. Like, my grandma still makes it. I'm like, heck yeah, beans and rice with put a fried egg on top, bro. Heck yeah, like, let's do
very
it.
Very homemade food. Very homemade food. That stuff is being Salvadorian. The plátanos being, grilled and stuff like that. And then you got your queso fresco. You got your huevo. You got your beans. When you got some pan with it, you know what I mean? That real, just not queso, especially the queso fresco, dude, is like so good. You eat that with a little bit of guacamole, it's really, really good.
Yeah, it's good. It's just good food. Like, I got offended one time because somebody asked me, like, oh, where'd you go? I went to one Mexican restaurant. I was like, oh, what'd you order? I said, like, some tacos de huevo con frijoles. They were like, oh, there's nothing like poor people food. I said, what the heck?
What? Oh my God. Some people, man,
like, oh, that's rude, man.
Yeah. It's a very limited mindset, man. Everybody eats that.
Yeah, man. It's like you ain't got nothing to do like with how much money you make,
Yeah, man. What are you gonna do when you eat steaks all the time? You ain't gonna be able to buy steaks forever. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's okay to buy of the most affordable food. You know what I mean? And that being said, we don't eat it just because it's the most affordable. We eat it because it's good.
Because it's good, yeah.
Because it's good.
That's exactly it.
You know what I mean? You can have some really, really affordable steak if you want to. You can have some really affordable tacos if you want to. Or you can have a very elegant taco. A very elevated Gordon Ramsay taco that costs just as much as a steak. It doesn't matter the price point on the food you're eating.
Yeah, if you like it. If you like it, man.
That's why I still eat microwave pizzas to this day. You go to my fridge right now, you will see microwave pizzas in my freezer right now because I still eat them. Like, sometimes that's what you want. It doesn't matter how much money you make.
Yeah, that's exactly it, man. You go to...
That's funny.
Oh, there's a guy, Dave Ramsey. Have you heard of him?
Dave Ramsey? No.
Yeah, he's like this millionaire investor dude who, like, he started a course because he went bankrupt, I think, like 3 times. And he wants to educate people on, like, hey, this is how you save up for the future. Then you don't spend on this, don't spend on that. And it's basically his platform is helping people with finances. And he says, hey, like, I eat rice and beans every day. He's like, I love it. And if you are dirt poor, you're trying to eat out every day for dinner, or like trying to eat out every day for lunch, like you're holding yourself back with that mentality.
Yeah.
You're not building anything because you're not saving any money. It's like you can eat rice and beans. And that's his philosophy. A lot of people make fun of him for that. It's like when you're dealing with personal finance, if you have a ton of debt, if you don't got enough money for your bills, just go out and buy rice and beans, and that's what you're going to eat, the rice and beans diet.
There you go. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that, man. And there was a time where I had to be very careful with what I was spending, especially when I started taking over the company from my dad. No money, completely broke, everything invested back into the company. That's what you had to eat, like microwave pizzas. That's when you really only had the option to eat the microwave pizza or the arroz and frijoles and the beans and all that. You know what I mean? So you get to that point in your life, but after you pass that moment, you get to the next level, and then you get to reap the rewards because you get to that point. Or you already all the way up and up, and guess what? You can still have your rice and beans, even though you're successful now.
You can still eat whatever you want.
Exactly, because it's still really, really good. You know what I mean? So there's those two sides there.
All right, man. I appreciate you doing this with me, dude. It's been a good convo.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. It's always fun talking to you. I feel like our conversations are always just natural, and we can just talk about whatever we want. But thank you for having me on your show, man. I appreciate it. Tell people where they could hit you up for your services. Yeah, you can hit me up for Roofing Linares LLC. Call me directly, 832-468-2574, or send me an email, shoot me a text at that number. My email is set, so SET, at roofinglinares.com. Linares is spelled with an N, so LIN as in Nancy, ARES.com. A lot of people think it's with an M, so I always say N, right? Or check us out on roofinglinares.com. We're there too. Or find me on Facebook. Yeah. Facebook.com. You can find us there too. But yeah, that we do all that kind of work. If you're looking for honest, transparent work, where we show you photos of before, during, and after everything. That's the kind of work that I believe in. Thank you so much for listening to the end. Big thanks to Set for letting me record in his garage. Hit him up on social media. Let him know you heard him on the show. Links to how to contact him will be in the description. If you live in the Houston, Texas area, hey, hit him up if you need services. Tell him I sent you. Hit me up on social media. That's TFX Pod on Facebook, Instagram, even YouTube or Reddit if you're into that. Let me know what you thought of this episode. Also, if this episode has brought any value to you, please show your support by clicking the link to buy me a coffee. Leave your social media handles if you do so I can give you a shout out and let you know how much I appreciate it. Don't forget that tfxpod.com has all of those links, and check out the merch. And as always, the best way to show your support is to tell your friends and family or anybody who you think might enjoy the show as much as you do. Thanks for sticking around to the end. And remember, actions speak louder than words, and talk is cheap. Until next time, bye-bye.